All right, well, good evening, everyone. We're going to start straight up at 6 o'clock and try and move quickly through quite a bit of material today. 2 items on the agenda. The first is going to be a presentation on purchasing, and I'll bring them up in just a minute to do that. And then afterward, I emailed everybody late this afternoon a draft of the recommendations report coming out of the commission. We've spent the past 5 weeks, 5 weeks, taking notes, listening to the comments and suggestions and ideas, trying to put those into actionable recommendations. There's 22 of them in this draft report. We know there will be some coming out of purchasing this evening. We know there will be some coming out of that as well. We'll add them in. So we will go through those 22. We want to make sure that we heard you correctly. We can make any changes, additions, revisions, deletions. If we miss something that is important to you, we can get that put in there. And we won't go through the detail behind each recommendation unless you ask us to. It's in the report in front of you, and it's in the report I emailed out. It'll be on the website, the Google Drive folder also. But we do have it available to put up on the screen. So if we get to a recommendation, you want to hear more about it, we'll put it up there. So we'll go through those. And next week, we anticipate being able to bring you a more polished document for your final review and final approval that we will then send on to City Council and the City Management as a recommendation from the Commission. In front of you also is your order form for dinner for next week. Just a reminder about that. And so we're going to go ahead and jump into purchasing. We have our Finance Director, Dave Erb, and our Purchasing Manager, Todd White, who are going to go through that presentation for you.
Well, good evening and welcome to week 6 of the Mayor's Commission. I'm very happy to be here presenting a little bit more background about the Finance Department. My name is David Erb, as James had mentioned. I've been with the city for 15 months. So in the 15 months, we've seen quite a bit in the department. A lot of change in the last year as far as the economy and COVID and you name it. So we've been working through a lot of those things. Anyway, a little background about the department. I oversee pretty much all the financial functions of the department except for budgeting. That is through the manager's office. So starting on the west wing, we have our utility billing and customer service area. We have 8 folks that work out of that area. So if you're paying a bill for the city, you'll probably, if you've called in, you've talked to them. We also handle miscellaneous billing and investments on that side. Back on the east wing for Finance Department, we handle accounts payable, accounting, internal audit, and purchasing, and we'll get to that in a minute. For the accounts payable group, we have 4 folks that work in that area, and we do 2 bill runs every week. In the accounting division, we have 4 folks that work in that. We have an accounting manager and 3 accountants that handle all the accounting and audit function. We have 1 individual that handles the internal audit function. So we have internal controls and policies in place, and this individual then oversees those, and she'll do just that. She'll do an internal audit to make sure that we're in compliance with our policies and procedures, both internal and external requirements that we have. And then we have the purchasing division. There's 3 folks in that, and I'll let Todd speak to that a little bit more. Todd brings with him 30 years of purchasing experience in the municipal sector. Started out in Corporate Christie, worked in the private sector a little bit, and he spent the last 15 years here with the city. Now, I am sad to report that we're going to be losing Todd in another 3 months. He's actually going to retire. So Todd is very sad about that, but I can tell you right now, in my 15 months working with Todd, he brings a wealth of information. He understands it like nobody I've met in my 30 years in the field. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Todd, and he's going to run through a presentation that speaks to the rules and regulations as it relates to the purchasing and different things that we can do as an outreach with purchasing. So with that, I'll just turn it over to Todd.
Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's nice to be back here. Saw you last time and glad to be back. Could Could you advance the slide, please? So I'm going to kind of start at a high level. We're basically governed by state law and city directives and city policies, which really kind of intertwine and become really the material of all the different rules and regulations that we have to abide by. These rules and regulations tell us sometimes what we can do and what we can't do. So just to kind of give you some information here on our city, for purchasing for dollar amounts, we don't issue a PO unless it's over $1,000. If it's over $1,000 up to right under $3,000, we get one written quote. If it's from $3,000 to right under $50,000, we get 3 written quotes, and we contact 2 hub vendors. And we'll talk about hub vendors in just a few minutes. If it's over $50,000, it's what we call a formal bid. It's advertisement placed in the paper, public bid opening where we read the bids out loud, evaluation is made, a recommendation is made, goes to our city council for actually a vote for approval of the award. The 2 main laws that we deal with are the Texas Local Government Code and the Texas Government Code. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of these laws are very complicated. In fact, I kind of think it's interesting, TML, or Texas Municipal League, every 2 years publishes a book that says Texas Procurement Laws Made Easy. The last publication was 60 pages. So if the laws were maybe a little bit easier, they wouldn't have to write a book about how to understand them. Next slide, please. I want to talk about hub or historically underutilized businesses. People can register with the state comptroller's office to become a certified hub. A hub is a minority where the business is owned by 51% of a minority. In this case, the minorities that a hub constitutes is a woman, it is a service-disabled veteran, it is a Black American, an Asian American, a Hispanic American, and a Native American. And all those represent what they call minorities that could feed into the hub. From a purchasing standpoint, we call 2 hubs, again, back on that dollar amount we mentioned, and we give them an opportunity to bid. Now, a hub is only recognized in the county that you reside in, so that would be Denton County only. So if somebody came and said, well, I'm a hub in Collin County or whatever, that's great. But to meet the requirements of the law, it's only those that reside in Denton County. The important thing here is, though, it's just an opportunity. There's not a preference given. Next slide, please. The only time that the only time that the law allows for a preference to be given is 2 things have to be met. 1, it's over $50,000, and 2, it's a local person that resides within the city limits of your city, in this case, Louisville. If it's in construction, it has to be less than $100,000 for the preference to kick in, and it's up to a 5% preference. If it's any other thing besides construction, if it's less than $500,000, it's a 5%, and if it's greater than $500,000, it's a 3%. Now, the law goes on to say that the governing body, which is the city council, has to make a written determination that there is an economic benefit to pay a higher price to award that contract to a local bidder. Now, that economic benefit might be in the form of a commitment from that bidder to use the local workforce, or it might be in the benefit to do from increased sales revenues, tax revenues. But that's the only time a preference is given. Next slide, please. I want to talk about Bidsync for a few minutes. Bidsync is our electronic bidding platform. You know, back in the old days, we did everything manual. So if somebody came to us and said, we'd like to get on your bidders list, we'd try to get that information. We'd put it into a database. We would try to make sure that the phone numbers are right, and if you moved, we got the address right and things like that. And we also mailed all of our bid invitations out. It was all paper. So we had to make copies, mail them all out. Bidders had to respond back with paper, mail them back to us and things like that. Now everything's electronic. It's paperless. It's also free. It doesn't cost you anything. The city pays for it. We pay for it ourselves, so it's free to everybody else. When Bidsync first came out, they charged 1% to the winning bidder that was paid directly to Bidsync. Well, that's not right. I mean, you would have to pay money actually to bid to the city, and that's not right. So that's why we budget for you, for everybody. So it's free. There's no charge to register. And the nice thing about Bidsync is when you register with them under whatever commodity or service it is that you sell, you don't register just with City of Louisville. You register with most North Texas cities are up here on it also. So if you register, you'll get invitations from, Plano, Garland, Richardson, Little Elm, all these different cities are on it, so you'll get invitations just like you would from Louisville. One of the things that we modified recently was that for construction contracts, we post all of our specifications out there and our drawings. It used to be that you had to pay for those. There were big sheets of paper that had all the drawings, technical specifications, and you had to pay for it. We had to print it. Now we upload all that. And so if you're a subcontractor that wants just a piece of it, you can go in there and download just the piece that you want to, look at it, and see if it's something you're interested in following up. The other thing that I really like about Bidsync is that you can post questions to it. Everybody sees that same question. We come back and we answer that question. Everybody sees the same answer. And it's also anonymous, so nobody knows who posted the question. And so it's a great forum to be able to kind of, answer anything that's out there, much like if we had a virtual pre-bid conference. And we also have a link to that on our homepage. Next slide, please. Okay, I know that this group asked a question specifically, can we tell how many dollars go to minority vendors? And we can't. When we set up everything in our system, there is no information blanks to be recorded there. We're not able to tell you the dollar spent or anything else. We want to ensure that there's no perception of favoritism in our bidding processes, and our goal is to treat all bidders equally and fairly and obtain the best value we can for the taxpayer. And one thing we are looking at is trying to modify our purchase order template to be able to capture hub environment or hub information. So we can go back and say, yes, was this particular bid or this particular purchase order qualified for hub? Did hubs participate, and was this a winning hub that got the bid? So we're in the process now of trying to modify that template to see if we can capture that information. I want to talk a little bit about availability and disparity studies. Some of you all may have heard about disparity studies. They're really called A&D, which is availability and disparity. It's a formal study that's done by an outside person. The city doesn't conduct it themselves. They hire a consultant to do that. And an economic disparity study will provide insight to determine if access to contracts are unfairly denied to minority and women-owned firms. So that's what a disparity study is. Our city has never done one, but that's what it is. Next slide, please. Who has done them? Probably the biggest one in the area was done back in 2008. It was sanctioned by COG, which is the Council of Governments, North Central COG. And it included City of Arlington, City of Fort Worth, DFW Airport, Fort Worth ISD, Fort Worth Transportation Authority, and North Texas Tollway Authority. They all combined forces there in this one huge study. I'm sure they shared the cost of that study among all the different participants. The only agency I know that has redone one on their own was the City of Arlington, and they did theirs February of 2019. What kind of started the whole disparity study is there was a pretty famous court case went all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, and it was Richmond, Virginia versus J.A. Croson. The gist of what the decree was when it was finished was that local government can adopt race-conscious programs only as a remedy for identified discrimination found in a disparity study. So that's what kind of started the whole disparity study issues that came out. Benefits. The benefits of disparity study really come in the form of construction, where you have a prime contractor and you have subcontractors. And the study will go out there and look at the makeup of the citizens and everything else, the makeup of the businesses there. And through the study itself, they'll come up with goals that are set up based on the makeup of everything. And basically, a prime contractor has these goals to meet when he subs out work to subcontractors. So it may be, 6%, 15%, whatever it might be. But the gist of it is you have to have that disparity study first. You can't arbitrarily just put those goals out there. We issued a survey to 17 cities. 3 did not respond, but we did issue the survey. And I'm just going to read it real fast. In addition to local preference laws and hub requirements listed in state statutes, is your city doing any additional outreach to minority businesses to encourage their participation in bidding? Does your city consider any financial advantage in awarding a contract to a minority business? And is there a position in your purchasing group dedicated to minority incentives? We couldn't put the survey up here, but before I leave tonight, the survey will be on the table where you picked up your name sheets. That'll be out there. I'm also going to put some information about Bidsync out there and also put my business card. So if you have any questions that come up, feel free to get in touch with me with anything. Next. Okay, this is a little bit complicated slide, so I've got to kind of walk with you on this one. What can we do without a disparity study? So, I mentioned a while ago that there's certain things in the law that says you can do, and there's certain things in the law that says you can't do. So if I'm bidding out a road construction, a street construction project, underground utilities, drainage program, water lines, sewer lines, those types of things that are civil engineering related, I have to award it based on lowest responsible bidder. That means I can only look at price alone. That's it, just that. Other types of purchases, I can do what's called a request for proposals. And a request for proposal looks at different things than just price alone. There's different categories out there, and then there's assigned weights to those categories. By law, I have to publish what those categories are, and I have to publish what those weights are so everybody knows that they're bidding on a level field. Okay? When those proposals come in, an evaluation team is put together, and then they go and they score all those proposals because there's point systems assigned to them. And so whoever gets the highest score would be the one that's recommended for award. So what can we do if we haven't done a disparity study? In construction projects, right, where you have a prime contractor and a subcontractor, historically we have used a couple of methods in the city to go about getting those types of contracts. One is competitive sealed proposals, and the other one is a construction manager at risk. A construction manager at risk is really a two-part process. It's one qualification-based. You go through qualifications, you shortlist it, and you actually go through an RFP process with them. So in construction, you're going to look at price. Price might be 40%, let's say, of what you're looking at. Then the other categories might be, time of completion, your safety record, your financial information, solvency, things like that. And what we're proposing is to have a separate new category put out there where we measure the actual bidder's minority outreach program itself. So if that bidder doesn't have a minority outreach program, he gets a 0. If he's got a really strong minority outreach program, he'll get the full points. If he's somewhat mediocre in there, he'll get some of those points, but not all of them. Now, this is just an idea I'm throwing out. It hasn't been vetted through our legal department, things like this, but I think it has some merit to it. Because what we're really trying to say to the construction market out there is this city, our city, City of Louisville, thinks it's important to contract with somebody who has a minority outreach program. Not only is it important, but we're going to score you. We're going to grade you on how good it is. And probably the best benefit is we're going to learn from it. Because if somebody has a really strong minority outreach program, we want to know what it is so we can replicate that. If they attend fairs, if they pass their business cards out in certain areas, if they, however they solicit to beef up that minority outreach, we want to do that also, so we want to do it. So we think that's has merit. We think it will gain traction. It's got to be tweaked. It's not vetted yet. I don't know another city that does that, but I think it's something that we want to look at for sure. I know the group had talked about mentorship programs. There's two that I looked at that are really pretty strong. One is TxDOT. TxDOT's had theirs for a long time. And the other one is NTTA. And what a mentorship program really constitutes is that one of these agencies sets up a board, like a review board. And it's volunteer-based, and so people will volunteer to be a mentor and to a minority. And so usually it's a prime contractor and minority come together. The minority wants to learn from the prime contractor wants to teach him that. And so it's really an agreement that's signed by both parties. They both understand what's required from them. The minority has to give all financial information to the prime contractor. And really what it is, that prime contractor tries to take the minority under their wing to teach them things such as, and this was just a small list that I put up here, business development, marketing, accounting, bids and proposal preparation, bonds, insurance, technical assistance, HR issues, things like that. And so They have to report every quarter back to the board to make sure everything's good. It's kind of like a prearranged marriage. If it doesn't work out, both of them just leave and that's it. But the real beauty of it is, the success of it is when that minority becomes a mentor himself to somebody else. And that's happened several times under this program. I'll be honest with you, I do not know a city that does this. I think most of it's handled probably through the Chamber of Commerce or small business development corporations, things like that. If anybody knows of a city that does this, we'd love to know what it is. We think it has a lot of merit. We'd love to do something like this. We're just not sure who to partner with in this. And then going forward, based on the surveys, and when you go through that survey, you'll realize that really our city is not too much different than any other city our size. One of the things that did come out, though, is that we're very negligent on the fact that we have not had minority vendor showcases or minority vendor shows. And we need to do that. We really need to do that. We need to do that probably at least twice a year. We could either do it ourselves or we could have it co-hosted with either the Chamber of Commerce or LISD, Denton County, University of North Texas, ourselves, whatever. But I think the key to that is when we have that is to actually have people from the city there, the end users. And it's really kind of a meet and greet. You know, a lot of times we don't know people have something to sell and they don't know who to contact when they want to sell it. And so the beauty of that is to try to get all of us in one area together so we can share that information. One other thing about it is that I'm involved with our local purchasing association, and it's made up of about 20 cities here in the area. And I've already approached a couple of the officers, one of them's the president of it, and I want our association to also sponsor a minority vendor show. And we've never done that before, and that's got a lot of traction too. The beauty of that is you wouldn't meet city departments so much, but you'd meet the purchasing people in each one of those cities. Find out how they post their bids and things like that. That concludes my presentation. I'm going to open up for questions, whatever you might have.
Okay. Thank you for presenting the information. Since you all have not had the minority disparity
study, yes, ma'am.
Study, is that something that you're going to consider doing?
Yes,
because
ma'am. I say yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Because I'm on the Arts Advisory Board, and what we do, we have a vetting process where we have an actual rubric that we go through for the different acts that come into the city.
Sure.
And we ask specific questions such as who makes up your board, you know, and they have to select, you know, certain things, and they're given a score based on the diversity and inclusion of their board, what they're doing to outreach to the various communities and the schools.
That's right.
For inclusivity. But they also, it has to be a rubric that's verifiable, because anybody can say anything.
That's correct.
And then, you know, you ask to come to a board meeting and you do not see those demographics sitting there. So I think that's something that's very important. And I think the vendor fair is great as well. But you mentioned something about with the purchasing and the applications, and you don't have a way of, you know, seeing if any minority businesses are applying. So my question is, you know, have you had classes to educate business owners on what you all look for? Because do you find yourself getting given the same companies, the same bids, the same business, because they know how to fill out the application and what you look for, what you want?
I think that's really the beauty of that vendor fair, is to try to teach how to do business with the city of Louisville, and we haven't done that. And I'll just be honest with you about trying to capture the data. It's just not on our supplier package when you register to be on the city. It doesn't ask for that information. And we have 4,400 vendors right now, approximately, in our system. Don't know how to go back and try to get that data.
Yes, I've got a question up here. Yes. What percentage of the city's contracts are non-construction contracts?
I don't know. There's probably a good 60% probably are not construction contracts. I mean, we bid
60%, did I say that correctly?
I would probably say 40% are construction.
Okay. My question is, You mentioned the possibility of awarding points for construction projects. Since the greater majority of the contracts are non-construction, wouldn't it stand to reason that you use that same system?
Well, let me
Look at non-construction contracts?
let me give you this as an example. So let's say company A is a janitorial firm, and let's say they're a very large janitorial firm, and part of what they have is a lawn service. So they do the whole thing. They do janitorial and lawn service, and they're very big, and they have a minority outreach program, okay, because they're just big. Company B is a minority himself. All he does is lawn. He has no minority outreach program. He is a minority himself. I'm going to bid out lawn service. I'm not bidding out janitorial service. I'm bidding out strictly lawn service. Company A can bid to me on lawn service, and he can also meet that requirement of a minority outreach program because he has it. Company B cannot because he doesn't have that minority outreach program because he is a minority. So the dilemma is this: does he get a 0 because he doesn't have that outreach program? Or does he get full points because he's a minority? I can't give full points, no disparity study. Therein lies the dilemma.
I can hardly hear you up here. However, I'd like to revisit that at some point when I can hear you more effectively. I'd like to go back to this availability and disparity study. Did you say that that's something that the city is going to do, or because you went through that pretty quickly?
It's something the city will consider.
And what would be one of the reasons why you wouldn't do that? Is it cost, or I'm just trying to get some clarification?
It would definitely be a management decision. I don't know. Cost, I'm sure, comes into it. When Arlington did theirs in February of 2019, it was $495,000. The city of Austin just commissioned theirs January of this year at $1 million. I'm not sure what a disparity study would cost for the city of Louisville. It's about a one.
If the availability and disparity study is the only way that you can determine if there's a problem, how will you know without that study?
Good point.
Could you share a little information with me about, say, a contractor? One contractor bid on a job, and he get the job. Then he sub it out. Can you give me a little information on insurance? How y'all do your insurance when y'all sub it out like that, contractors? Because I want to know who's going to pay for it.
Sure.
If they cut a utility line or hit somebody's line, who pays for that?
Well, when you issue a contract, you have a prime contractor, right? He may sub out pieces of it to other contractors, but insurance is covered under that prime contractor's umbrella. So he's ultimately responsible. So if he subbed anything out, he is still held responsible. The prime contractor is. Sorry for not holding my mic.
Mr. Copley,
Yes, sir.
my question actually goes back to more of the earlier part of your presentation, and it kind of dovetails Dr. Pettaway. You talked about a list of hub contractors, hub contractors in general. Is there a list of those?
There is, yes, sir. It's maintained on the Texas State Comptroller's office.
Okay.
And it's there, I believe when you register and become a hub, it's for 4 years. And so we check constantly to see what changes there.
All right. Do you have any kind of feel for or any data that talks about how broad your issuance of contracts are? I mean, are you using the same contractors over and over?
I would say not. I mean, we bid everything out. Again, it's on a point system. Price dictates a lot. Sure. And so, theoretically, if you had one person low all the time, they would probably get that. But we put it out. Everybody's open to participate in it.
Yeah. Okay. What I'm seeing here is there's a barrier that is keeping the city legally safe from being accused of not having enough diversity initiative and things like that. But I think we're lacking the ability or the action of intentionally reaching the minority communities. And this system that's in place, the Bidsync system,
Yeah.
it's for me, it's the electronic equivalent of saying, well, I'm colorblind, I don't see color, right? It's filtered out, but the issues are still there, or certainly potentially. And I'm from that school that says, if you don't measure it, how can you manage it, right? So those are my points, I guess.
They're well taken. I think the steps we're trying to do is through that minority vendor fair and things like that to try to show the encouragement. I can't make people bid to me. I can invite them. I can send them invitations, but I can't make them bid to me.
Right. And you know what? I got right to my points there, but I should also say I'm appreciative of in your presentation you talked about some things that you would like to see done. You think these things would help, would work,
Yes,
and I'm appreciative of that. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. So
Yes, ma'am.
on the vendor fair, that is a great idea. And I think the reason why I say it's a great idea, especially for a meet and greet and also as an educational forum, being in the insurance industry, I'm very familiar with the construction part of it,
Yes.
especially from the insurance part, because they have to have what bid bonds.
Yes.
So you have to have completion bonds,
That's correct.
performance bonds, and everything like that. So going back to what we had talked about weeks ago about getting minorities being able to get loans at banks and everything like that, well, that's another blockage that can have a significant impact on black contractors
Right.
or minority contractors, is find a company, a surety that's going to,
That's
so
right.
when you do put these vendor fairs in place, have some surety companies there
Yeah.
that will work with minorities, because you wouldn't believe it or not, I get a lot of contractors calling for these type of bonds, and they were not
Absolutely.
even aware. I mean, at the last moment, they were told they
Right.
needed them,
Right.
and then the bidding process has been over with. And so that leads me to believe, is the information not out there for them to know ahead of time what's required to bid, and also are the surety companies, we have to watch that as well, because we know how things can get lost in the application process,
Right.
or it's not always fair in that aspect. So I think with the vendor fair, just having some of those surety companies there, explaining the whole insurance aspect behind it, because that plays a significant part in it
Yeah.
as well.
I think that's a great idea. We have an insurance consultant that works for the city, and I think he'd be great to be there to field those questions. We have limits that are set, and there's reasons why we have those limits set. And he's the expert. He could explain those types of things and try to help. Yes, ma'am.
You said in your presentation, it was very informative, and I appreciate that you have about 4,400 bidders.
Vendors in our
your
system.
Once you're a vendor and you said you don't have any way to get the information on them, once they're in your system, do they reapply?
No,
Are
ma'am.
they in your system forever?
They're in there forever. We'll deactivate them if it's been a certain number of years that we haven't used them, but they'll always be in our system.
Because I'm wondering is, as you accept new vendors, if you could ask some questions so that you know what if it's a large company, you know what their outreach, if they have an outreach program, you know that, so that you can add something to your list, because if they're on there forever, you don't have any way
Right.
of getting it unless you do some updated, when you ask them if they change their address, and I'm assuming there's a process to put in change of address and those sorts of things. Maybe you could put a question in that section where they are updating their address, where they could update their minority participation, or whether they could be a minority company and you you don't know that they're a minority company.
That's correct.
So maybe when on that page where they update their information, you could ask that question and maybe they would update that information.
Got it.
Hi, great job, and thank you.
Thank you.
I think I have several questions, but
Sure.
first, you said 60% are non-contractor, non-construction.
Normal goods and services, things like that.
Okay, so with the vendor fair, is that something, what are the goals for increasing minority vendors for the city of Louisville?
You know,
Like-
I think the biggest thing we have is sort of that meet and greet, so we can see that communication between both parties. We're looking for something to purchase, and you have that to purchase. We want to kind of make that as a union so we can see it. The other part is to explain where we do post our bids, how we put them out, things like that. Try to educate that that's where you do go. We're open here. If you want to make an appointment to see somebody in the city for purchasing goods or services, we usually ask that you go through our department first, and then we kind of broker that and make sure that there's a meeting that happens. And so if you'd like to meet somebody one-to-one on doing that, we'd love to do that. But I think it's more just an education.
So do we have that?
Oh,
on
I'm
the
sorry. I'm so sorry.
No.
Sorry.
Is it on the calendar now for, as, I know we're going through COVID right now, but
Yeah.
do you have a scheduled date that's somewhere for that vendor fair to?
We don't have a specific date. It's definitely something we're going to do very soon. But you're absolutely right. The COVID right now has kind of put a damper on that.
And how closely do you work with the Chamber of Commerce?
Not very.
Okay, because we're finding that
Sad to say.
there's
No,
a
ma'am.
lot of things that.
Normally, a lot of times your Chamber of Commerce will actually sponsor vendor shows and vendor things. We'd love to co-host something with them to try to do that, but we also want to do it on our own if that's what, we'll do it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
If a non-minority business puts in a bid, but they have a minority support system, they get points. But then if a minority business puts in the same bid, but they don't have a minority support system, they wouldn't get 0 points for that category.
For non-construction, and that's the reason I tried to explain it to the gentleman a while ago that asked that. On construction projects, though, the type of construction projects we're talking about, like building a building, like a fire station or Thrive or somebody, you'll have a prime contractor, and I guarantee you that prime contractor will sub out some of that work. He will not fulfill that work himself. He won't self-provide that work. He'll have some sub. So if you had a woman-owned business, large company, woman-owned business, she's a prime contractor, she still has to sub out work. And so what we're looking at is her minority outreach program to those subs that she'll engage to do that.
Okay, thank you.
First of all, thank you for coming, and thank all of you guys for being here for the last several weeks. You had said something about the Chamber of Commerce in Louisville, and I was on the board for several years, and no one could tell me. Apparently there was a split several years ago with the Louisville Chamber, disagreement or something, and no one could tell me what. I just said something happened, but I do know that the city of Flower Mound and the city of Capel works very close with their chamber. Yep. So if we can make a note somewhere to say, hey, let's do something to whatever happened in the past, to get that relationship, because I think there's a lot of value that goes with great organization. And right now it appears that we kind of work in a silo and maybe not having a synergism to make this a lot more efficient and make the city of Louisville a lot more attractive to business and minorities.
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry.
Any other questions or comments in the room or online for Todd and David? Okay, I want to just quickly, since we're at the recommendation stage, I want to hit the ones that I think we picked up out of the comments. The one is, as Todd mentioned, right now we don't have a system for tracking hub vendors and information, but he said we might be able to add to our vendor application going forward that hub designation. I'm seeing some nodding heads. That's something you'd like to see us include in there? Okay. Vendor fair, I heard a lot of interest in the vendor fair. I'm going to assume that that's in. The awarding points to construction bids if they include a written plan for inclusive practices. Something no one's ever done that I'm aware of. We'd be the first I know of to do it. Any additional thoughts or issues on that one? Or are we ready to move forward with some kind of recommendation? Okay, for those who didn't hear, the comment was on the vendor fair to make sure we have the insurance specialist. I wrote it down. It'll be in there. Business mentorship program, there wasn't a lot of questions on it, but is that something, any thoughts or comments to add to that, or should we move forward with including that recommendation? I know when we had our first meeting talking about community resources that were lacking, a lot of people talked about business-to-business mentorship, so here. I'm far enough away. But there was a lot of people talking that first week about business-to-business mentorship, and this addresses that. And then the last one, the availability and disparity, or is it disparity and availability? Availability and disparity study. There seems to be some interest in at least researching that to see what the options are for doing that. Got a mic coming your way, Joan. And then I saw two other hands.
I haven't looked at that decision, but I'd ask you to ask your legal department to look very closely, because with everything that happens, there's always a way around something that says, so the blanket, no, we can't do this, because it could be the city that had the litigation didn't have enough statistics because they weren't tracking anything and they made some decisions. So I guess I'd like to see.
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah,
that's exactly what it was. The city came up with some numbers as goals, and they were sued because somebody challenged those goals.
Right.
And when they challenged them, the methodology that was used was really not there. And so the suit went all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court because that methodology being out or not in part of that equation, the only way to remedy that was really through a very ingrained disparity study.
And that's why I'm wanting your legal department to look at that, because if you have the right statistics out there, you can actually get around almost anything that the court says that you have to do. It's just a matter of taking what they said, dissecting it, and fixing the deficiencies that were in the defendant's litigation so that you're not tagged by that same litigation. And that's why I was asking the question about getting that current information, because with tax revenues being down, it's hard for a city to decide to spend, and I don't know how much it would cost,
right,
but millions of dollars on a disparity study when maybe a crafted survey of your vendors. And like I say, once you read that decision, and I haven't read it, so I don't know everything it says, but it sounds like it was a statistical deficiency in that. You may be able to actually do something without having that study, but you're going to have to analyze what the court said, then you just figure your way around it. That's what lawyers do all the time. So I think there's a way around that. I think it's just a matter of your lawyers getting in there and doing some hard work to see what the court said you had to do, what the deficiencies were, and making sure the city doesn't have those deficiencies. It's not to say you won't be sued, because everybody sues. It doesn't cost that much to sue. But you can win if you have your statistics together. And it sounds like that city did not have its statistics together at all. And they shouldn't have taken that suit forward. Sometimes people take a suit forward because they don't want to do what they're doing. And so this is a way to get somebody to say you don't want to do it, and you litigate that knowing you're going to lose because you want a certain result. And so I don't know what happened there, but I think there's a way around it.
Thank you.
Okay.
I added in legal review, so we've got that.
And just one more thing. This might be the opportunity, since I don't see what's her name, Bobby here, but that's something that might be considered in reference for the county. And you guys, if you guys, she's in your hip pocket, talk to her and see if that's something the commissioners can put on for next year.
About a disparity study? I'm not sure
All the
if
cities in Denton.
I'm not sure if a county-wide one could apply to a city. We can look into it, and if nothing else, other cities might. Yeah, we'll talk to her.
Okay.
We'll have it. Penny?
I just have one small question. Do we make an announcement? Do we make announcements of upcoming bids for the city of Louisville, like the city of Dallas does?
We do. By law, if it's over $50,000, we put an ad in the paper. Most people don't read the paper these days. It's one of those kind of laws hung over. But we post everything on our website. And so if you go cityoflouisville.com under purchasing current bids, you push on that, it takes you automatically to Bidsync, and that's where all of our bids are.
Okay, so you're posting it, but do you make, thank you. I think that's something we should change. Nobody reads the paper. I think it should be.
It's a law. It's a law that everybody's been trying to change for the last 20 years in our purchasing association. With today's time, nobody reads the paper. In fact, if you go online, it's a subscription only.
But we could utilize, once again, the Chamber of Commerce, because
Absolutely.
the
Absolutely.
Dallas Chamber of Commerce sends out an email with their bids, so that you'll know what's coming up for the city of Dallas. So, that's just a simple give, I think.
And I just want to add
cost us anything.
Sorry, I just want to add one thing on that because the chamber could do that now. The chamber could take our bid page and send it out if they wanted to. When Ray was talking about a split, I don't know if there's a split. In fact, we're working with the chamber on a number of projects right now. One of the areas where the chamber and the city sometimes butt heads is when there's a program that the chamber offers. It's a chamber member program in most cases. So they'll send out to all their members, but if you're not a member, you don't get it. There's got to be a benefit to joining. Our programs, by default, have to be everybody. So I think there's ways we can better publicize our bid process, and it might involve the chamber, but it wouldn't just be the chamber.
Well, that's a problem with the chamber, because I'm not a member of the Dallas Chamber, and I receive their weekly newsletter. So, that's apples and oranges. The chamber can do it if they wanted to.
Yeah. Well, we can definitely look into ways to better publicize our available contracts. There's so many contracts that would flood our social media, maybe a separate account to do it. Again, there's ways. We'll look into it. Any other?
More contracts in the city of Dallas, and they're sending theirs out. So there's got to be a way for us to do it.
Okay. Any other items on purchasing? Those are the 5 that I wrote down. I'm going to add in about the better publicity for bids, so that's 6 that I'll have when I can have a third hand. Anything else for purchasing while we have Dave and Todd available? Online, anyone? Nothing's marked. If not, then we're going to move into the, thank you, Todd. Thank you, Dave. Then we're going to move into the recommendations in the draft report. Again, I emailed the draft report out, but it was late in the afternoon, so it's probably in your inbox right now. And it's also, I did not put it in the Google Drive yet because I had to run over here, but I will do that first thing in the morning. So what we're going to do on the screen, we're going to go through the 22, what we've identified as 22 recommendations. We're adding 6 based on the discussion tonight. You'll see those next week. And for each of the 22, we're just going to put up here the basic description of the recommendation. The draft report has more details, and we have a document we can bring up that has more details. So if you want to ask questions about it, we can address those. We just want to try and minimize the time impact as much as we can so that we're not keeping you here until Friday. So we're going to go one at a time. And just a couple things first. They're numbered right now, 1 through 22. That doesn't mean that number 1 is the most important and number 22 is the least important. I always put those in my reports because our Louisville 2025 plan has 9 big moves, and there are some people that assume big move number 1 was the most important, big move number 9 was the least important. They're not. The assumption is we're going to do everything in the report as best we can. So, and then in your draft report, you'll see that for each of these recommendations we go through, they have a separate page of detail, and on that page of detail, it includes steps that will be taken toward that particular recommendation. It includes the status as of now. So a couple of these we saw early on, there was a lot of consensus. We've jumped on them and got them knocked out already. You'll see a couple that are marked as completed. Other than that, they might be in progress or scheduled, means we haven't started them yet, but we know when we're going to, or planned. So we haven't started it yet or scheduled it yet, but we're working on how we're going to do it. So there's 4 statuses. And then assigned is the department or position who is assigned to be responsible for this recommendation. It's actually Calvin Dorsey, who's with us online, who pointed out a couple weeks ago, when you have these recommendations, we need to know who's driving each one of them so that we know, there's a responsible party. So you'll see on each recommendation page a department or position, or in some cases multiple departments that are directly involved in that recommendation. So here's number 1. Prioritize creation and hiring of a full-time position dedicated to championing diversity, inclusion, and transparency within the city organization and in public engagement. And if you've looked in the draft report, you'll see that City Manager Barron has put a package for this in the mid-year report to City Council for their consideration. It's not in the budget right now because of the revenue shortages that we talked about, but it's in there for consideration at mid-year if things are bouncing back. Well, let's not move on just yet. I want to make sure. Before we move to 2, any thoughts or comments on the recommendation number 1? Okay, I got a thumbs up. I like that. Number 2, and again, I'll remind you, if you think of something on your way home or tomorrow or over the weekend, email me. There's plenty of time to make changes here. So I'm at your disposal. Email me and I'll take care of it. Number 2, prioritize employee recruitment efforts focused on minority candidates through an intentional program of advertising, site visits, use of professional consultants, and word of mouth. So this is about employee recruitment, prioritizing this element of recruitment.
I was able to put a line item in the budget on this item to ask for additional funding. And so as council sets the tax rate, if they keep the rate where it is currently, the current rate, then I have recommended that as one of the 4 programs that they need to fund. And I've been discussing this with the council, and I believe we do have support for that.
Okay. So employee recruitment. Any thoughts, questions, discussion on item number 2? Okay. We'll move to number 3. Recommendation number 3, implement a regular schedule of mandatory diversity and bias awareness training for all city employees with special emphasis on mandatory training for supervisors involved in the hiring process. So currently there's training periodically or training when you're hired. This would mandate it on a regular schedule for everyone.
So I also added money in the budget for that item, and it is in that priority package that council will, I'm sure, support if they keep the current tax rate.
So any questions, thoughts, or comments on number 3? So far, we're hearing you okay? All right. Number 4, regularly review internal promotion practices to ensure diversity objectives are considered before deciding to post a job for only internal applicants. There was one idea brought up about no more internal promotions, just do external, the thought being you could diversify more that way. The concern that we ran into is for employees that are trying to work their way up through an organization, it takes away that incentive. There's no opportunity for growth. So if we're giving people classes and training and building them up, but there's nowhere to go, you lose good employees. But if you hire from within, it does create a new opening. So we feel like we can do both. But this says here, when we do the promotions, that to really look at it first and ensure that diversity objectives are being considered before the city manager will approve an internal posting.
And one thing I might mention, several of these recommendations from HR, the one thing you're going to see is that the HR department will be looking at the selection of who they're going to offer the job before they offer the job. We've been pretty much decentralized, so departments are out there interviewing, offering a job, and HR doesn't know anything about it till that job is offered. So same thing with promotions. A department, when they decide they've done their process and they're ready to make that determination, then they're going to have to run that by HR, who will look at their process, make sure that there were no bias and that everyone that should have been interviewed was interviewed and that there is a good reason for that person is the most qualified.
So now, I've been out of corporate America since 1999, so I don't really know how all that works. But I know when my sister was looking for, when she was working at GE Capital, they would post externally for 2 weeks, and even the internal employees could apply at that time, and then they would have a cutoff. And so maybe that's something that could be implemented here, just give a certain time frame for it to be posted externally, gather that, and then go back internally and look at those employees that way.
And that was our ask, that we could do a 7-day internal and then a 7-day outside of the city, and then we could determine the best suited employee the best suited person for that position may be a minority, because like Dr. Pettaway said, doing it the way you're doing it, you're just recycling the same employees.
Yes, and that's a good point. We do post, the majority of the positions are posted to the outside. Sometimes, for example, a dispatcher in our dispatch center, we're going to need a supervisor. There's really would be very difficult to bring someone from the outside to be a supervisor of our dispatch center, because that's a highly technical job, and we do it a certain way. We have, our computer equipment. So the majority of the jobs that are posted internally only, it's because that skill set.
So you're saying an outside dispatcher from Flower Mound couldn't come in and be a dispatcher, supervisor dispatcher for Louisville?
Microphone.
Yeah, it's so most every department has a different CAD and RMS system and different general orders. For our police department, we have different rules, different things for how we dispatch. Now, I'm not saying it would never happen. There could be a time that we have no internal dispatchers that have a desire or the ability to be a supervisor, and we would have to go outside, and then the manager or whoever would have to spend a lot of time training that. But typically we have diversity especially in dispatch, and so it's an opportunity for in fact, we just promoted to our coordinator a black female that's been with us for a number of years.
So why do you say you have diversity, especially in dispatch?
Well,
I don't understand.
I'm just thinking about that particular job of one that we just posted internally recently, within the last 2 months. And we had 2 internal applicants, or 3, Kevin, I think 2 internal applicants, a white male, or an Asian male, I believe, and a black female. And we promoted the black female. Had we gone outside, well, it just would have been very difficult to bring somebody in to manage that didn't know our software, our processes. So many times, most of the time we do post to the outside, and just as Tamala said, internal and external applicants will apply. It's only in those very specialized positions where we feel like that somebody to the outside would not have the same quality of knowledge, skills, and ability to do that particular job.
Because a dispatcher job is at high turnover rate?
Yes,
I think
and
it is, right?
we always run vacancies for dispatchers. We haven't been full of dispatchers for years because it's 24/7, so it's difficult to work shift work, and it's very intense and you have to be able to multitask, and I think that's the one job, one of many jobs, but there is no way I could do that job. It's very, very difficult.
Okay, right there.
Right, do we have a diversity objective set? For example, we're going to hire 20% this year, 30% next year.
You're talking about percent goals for hiring?
Well, or whatever the goal would be, because, the recommendation is good, to ensure the diversity objective is met, but what is the objective?
So the HR department, and that's one of you'll see the information under one of the recommendations. They will look at the entire process and get the statistics quarterly and send that out to all of the departments and post it on our website. And then annually it will be presented to council. If council see that there's areas where we're underutilized and not making progress, then they can recommend at that time that we get a commission or citizens board to help us address that. So that's what we've put as our recommendation. I think with a renewed focus on our recruitment piece and advertising, and with HR being involved in training, I think that we'll be able to make progress, and then we want to show that progress and make that transparent to our citizens. So if you wanted to look every quarter, you could see that progress that we're making, and then that gives our city council annually an opportunity to review and see if they feel like we're making progress going the right direction, and if not, then they can take action to appoint a citizens committee to help us to figure out what we're doing wrong and what we can do better.
Okay, so I would just say, just be careful with that statement, because it sounds like, it's just recycling. I mean, all those words around it still sounds the same. And just as an example, and again, no offense to the chief, because again, I'm extremely happy with the way things have been going, but in Carrollton, they went outside and brought in a new chief. And it has nothing to do with the people that were there, but it was just, maybe it was time to look at a new way, a new opportunity. And so therefore, when you keep recycling, you don't learn anything new. You don't get anything different. And that's what this whole thing is about, is looking and getting things different and not just doing things the same way. So just be careful when you make a statement like that, because again, it just goes back to me like nothing's changing.
So of course, police chief, that position, we did take outside applications. Kevin just beat them. But let me ask this question. Again, majority of our positions are posted for external. It's only a few that are not. Is it feasible to say that for those that are not going to be posted external, that department head has to give a written explanation to the manager first and get approval before it can be inside only?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. That makes it more difficult, which for some people means they aren't going to bother. Would that maybe be move in the right direction? No, they can't hear you. They can't hear you on the computer if you don't have the mic right here.
Thank you. I think that's a great idea, and I say that because I don't remember her name. The young lady who was here, that's a training specialist. Tamara. Right. So let's just say, for giggles, that there was a training coordinator position. Now she's the specialist. So it would be nice if she could, put her years of service as a specialist as a viable candidate. But then if you open it up to outside first, and then you have others who may come in who may have whatever expertise as well, their resume may rise a little bit higher to the top, although she has that diversity side to her application. So I just think that if we just do our due diligence and be intentional, actionable intentions, I make sure I put that word there, then I would hate to see someone come in and then she's having to train somebody to do her, she's having to train her supervisor when she is certainly capable of doing that. So I understand what you're saying. I see both sides.
It is balanced.
Right. So I see both sides of it, but I just want to throw that out there.
Okay, thank you. Joan?
I was just going to say that, and I've got my lawyer hat on now, I think the correct thing by not having specific numbers and percentage, because you're not going to be able to defend that litigation when you get sued. And once you print that out there, it's out there. So I think the process of intentionally looking at what you're doing, looking at your city's population, and intentionally making decisions that encourage minority people to apply is the best approach, because there's a lot of litigation on numbers. I mean, University of Texas is still being sued, and they've been sued for the last 25 years. So I think you've got to be really careful, and I think that's why cities have, and everybody has gotten away from percentages, because I think you cannot defend percentages. Ultimately, the person you select should be the best person for that job. And each person should have the same opportunity and consideration for that job. And we're wanting to make sure that people have the same opportunity and consideration. Because you don't want to spend all your money in litigation. I mean, as a lawyer, I think that's a great thing. But as a city, you can't get anything done if you're always in the midst of litigation.
And some of the next recommendations specifically address the opportunity, making sure that we're doing a good job of making that available. Right there.
Before we move on to that was a great point, and I'd like to go back to the example that you made about the dispatcher. So in that particular case, a black female was promoted to supervisor. I'm presuming that you'll need to backfill her position?
So she was promoted from supervisor to coordinator, so she manages the whole dispatch center.
Okay.
And then we backfilled that job. I don't know if it's been filled yet. It has.
Okay.
And I don't know what.
Internally? Okay, great.
So
So then somewhere along the line, I would assume there's an opening that got created?
Yeah, the dispatcher jobs are open. So we have dispatcher, dispatcher twos, supervisors, and then the coordinator.
Okay. So is there any way then for the open position now to have some additional weight towards a minority candidate? And my question there is...
So the one thing about dispatcher, this is an interesting job to be talking about. Pretty much everyone it's sort of like police officer. Everybody that applies for dispatcher passes there's a critical test, passes the background standards, and gets a job offer, gets a job. So for us we do have quite a bit of diversity in dispatch, but for us to increase that diversity, it's going to be us out finding those candidates that want to be dispatchers and getting them to apply.
Okay.
Because we're not picking one over the other.
Right.
We've got all of these vacancies. In fact, if y'all know anybody that would like to be a dispatcher, 4 vacancies today. They work a lot of mandatory overtime because they have to fill that job 24/7.
So that might not have been the right example, but my point, I guess, is that we're not going to fix all of this overnight, but there has to be a systemic, actionable, intentional effort in order to fix the numbers that were presented earlier.
Absolutely,
and
our HR...
where there are opportunities, I mean, as you said, we need to make sure that it's the right candidate or the best candidate gets the job. But how do you prepare so that everybody has the right opportunities? It's the opportunity of having a chance, which means
I think recruiting it's where we recruit, it's where we advertise, and it's word of mouth, all of those things, and we have to be intentional about every one of those things.
And I just have one quick question. So when you are posting externally, so I don't know how your positions are labeled, if they're labeled grade 1 or level 1, level 2, executive level. So when you're looking to hire, are the only jobs that's posted externally are like your lower level positions?
No, I mean, all jobs.
Okay,
so
all
when
jobs.
we posted the
Okay.
police chief, and actually if you go out to our website there, and we need to do a better job of advertising, and you're interested in a job, there is an actual page that you can say, I'm interested in accounting jobs, or I'm interested in, traffic technical jobs. And as soon as a job is posted that meets that, an email, when you say you're interested, you put your email address, and an email goes out automatically that says, hey, the city of Louisville's looking for accountants, so you said you were interested, please apply.
That list is posted at my church.
And I need to send you a new one. I've been out of town the past few days, but I got a new one coming.
Yeah, real quick, I think you're right about the promotions from within, because I've seen it on both sides, where some of the departments I managed, here was someone who deserved to be promoted. Had I gone outside and brought somebody else in to manage that department, probably would have been an issue. Now, back to the objectives, over the 40 years of IBM, I had the opportunity to be the EO manager for the Dallas region for a few years. And, it's not setting targets, but that's clearly the wrong thing to do. But I like the answer in terms of this is an objective. When we had the objective, it was set, this is the demographics of this particular region. What we want to do is strive to get as close to the equal representation as that city is represented. So once again, you'd get guys coming in, well, we're going to hire X number. Now, there were some extreme situations where they were so far behind that you had to force some things because otherwise nothing was going to happen. But I like the answer in terms of this is the objective because it moves the bar and you're not going to get there overnight doing it the right way. So once again, I like the answer, but the question more of when you look at the objectives, overall, what's the plan to get you there? Because clearly everything we see, this city is not in bad shape at all. Are there some improvements that can be made? Sure, but let's take our time and let's do this the right way because that's the reason affirmative action has left a bad taste in some folks' mouths. It's because the wrong people were put in positions and they were forced without proper training, without doing the things that need to be done, and the next thing you know, you've got a problem, and it's bad for everyone.
Up front here, Fumi?
Yeah, so just to piggyback on what they were saying back there, on my way here, I was listening to NPR, and they were just talking about how Yale just lost a lawsuit filed against them by the Justice Department, and it was filed by white and Asian students who felt discriminated against in their admission policies because they said that people who were equally qualified as them, let's say a student, the white student and the black student and the Hispanic student were the same qualifications, they were more likely to admit the black or the Hispanic student over them. So I agree with you guys. We definitely have to be careful in the way that we go about it so we don't get sued and end up on the news.
And I think recommendation 3, we saw recruitment, and on number 7, we will see talking about the hiring process. So there are some processes that we can make better that will improve that overall and hopefully also keep us out of court. No offense, Joan, but no more money to the lawyers. They've got plenty. Ready to move to number 5? Okay, number 5. Create an internal diversity team that includes members from various city departments and charge the group with providing open feedback about diversity efforts and promoting diversity within the organization through special events and educational programming. I believe Tamara was going to be heading this up for us, isn't she?
She is.
She is very excited. Whether you put it in there or not, she's planning to do this, so you might as well just put it in. Any thoughts on number 5? This is our internal culture. This is for employees looking at the city and offering their input. Okay, number 6, actively identify minority employees for inclusion in the Leadership Development Series and encourage their professional growth through training, mentoring, and networking. Something that many supervisors are doing, but it's maybe not as structured as it could be, but HR getting involved will help with that. So this is looking at people such as a Tamara, who could be a department director at some point. What do we need to do to get her ready for that? What training does she need? What skills does she need? And getting people ready.
One thing on this one, we are going to hire a third party to come work with our department directors to help us determine what kind of training do we need to do to give us that outside perspective and to work with Tamara. And then all of that kind of aligns also with the promotion for the internal that we just talked about, where there are some of those jobs we're promoting from internal to make sure that our minority employees get that training and that opportunity to move up with the city. So that's kind of a whole package, and I believe that is included in the diversity funding that Ms. Barron talked about for that third party to come in and help us. Our leadership development series is outdated. It was a great program when it was started 20 years ago. Tamara kind of inherited it when she took over as training specialist a couple of years ago. And so it needs to be refreshed, and in light of how everything changes, I think it's a very important step, and it's going to be very valuable to have that third party be able to assist us.
I think we've all seen situations where an employee just lacked one piece of important training. I worked with someone at a previous city who had fabulous skill set, but was terrible at speaking to groups, just couldn't do it. So the city manager signed him up for Toastmasters, and he started doing that every week, and that man is now a city manager at a smaller town in Denton County. So it worked. It worked well. So any questions or thoughts on this one? Number 6. Okay, number 7. Revise the current hiring process to minimize the influence of hidden biases by removing applicant names from information sent to hiring managers by human resources, and by requiring that preliminary interviews be conducted by phone. One thing to clarify, where it says hiring managers, it doesn't mean manager level. It's whatever the employee is. We just use that as a generic term. Could be a coordinator, supervisor, whatever they are. And this is getting HR involved in the hiring process more.
Yes, and one thing we're also looking at to see if our applicant tracking system has the ability to mask the college name. If it does, we will do it. But with the number of applicants we get for every job, to do that by hand would just be impossible. So, that's one of the things I will say. We used to post all jobs for 2 weeks. Now, if we post, for example, an administrative assistant job for a week, we'll get 200 applicants that in 1 week's time that meet the MQs that get sent to the hiring manager, and that's a lot of applications to weed through. So we don't want to create an additional burden on the HR department by having to go in and redact that and figure out a way to copy those and get those sent out without taking away the functionality of the system. But we've got a request into the software system to see if they can program it to make that work. So we'll
Have we already implemented the blanking out the name?
I don't know. I think that's a programming thing too. I don't know if it's actually, it's in the process.
Okay.
So I can't tell you it's happened today, but they're working on that piece too.
So the way our system works, when my department posts a job that I'm going to be doing the interviews, we post the job, HR advertises it, they get all the applications, they get them all internally or electronically. When they're done, they go through and identify off of these 150 names which ones meet the minimum qualifications. If it says in there, must have a driver's license, and somebody said, I don't have a driver's license, they're out. Or if it said you must have a 4-year degree, which usually we say it's preferred but not required, but if it says you've got to have a 4-year degree and they don't, they're out. So they'll send me a list of the, say, 75 names that qualify, and it's just got their names, and if I click on their name, then it takes me to their application, where it's got all the other information. So we're looking at a system where I wouldn't have the name, and then when I went to the application, if there's a way to block out the college name, because a couple of people mentioned that maybe people who went to a historically black university might have a hidden bias against those. I want to say, of course there's not, but of course we know there is. So we're looking at that, but that's outside of our control. We're seeing if they can do it. So any questions on this one?
No. I don't.
Would there be, would we like digitally alter the voices? I got to tell you, my hope is if we've got someone who's hiring a position who is that determined to discriminate against somebody, that we have found them and gotten rid of them by now. Because that's an awful lot of work just to be a jerk. So, I think everybody, looks at some names and maybe say, I wonder if that name, like Fumi, your name, I was like, that sounds maybe Nigerian. I was pretty close. But Then our city attorney has what I guess would be called an Anglo name, but she's Latina. So the dude she married wasn't. So Liz Plaster. So, so number 7. So this is number 7. Yeah, phone interviews for the first interview at least, and I guess we talked about doing for all interviews, but at least for now it's for preliminary interviews. See how that works. And what we've learned, a lot of people are learning through this whole pandemic thing. We've learned that phone interviews can get the job done because we've had to do a lot of them. So, number 8. Okay, prepare and publicly disseminate an annual report on the demographic data related to new hires, promotions, and total workforce. And the City Council may appoint a multicultural task force to further analyze underutilized areas. So the report we showed you about our demographics, where we break it down by department and we show the entire workforce, promotions, new hires, with all those categories. We would publicly disseminate that every year, put it out on our website, let people know it's out there, give it to council, and if mayor and council look at it and say, we're still way behind on Hispanic employees, we need to do something about it, they would have the ability to set up a task force to say, here's what we need to try next. So basically pull the mayor's commission together again with one topic, and this would be it.
And actually in our information, we're going to do it quarterly for the website and for the city manager, but council will be annually.
Okay. We might change the wording on that just to reflect that. So quarterly reports on the website, annual to city council, although they can read the website too. So. Anything on number 8? Okay, number 9. Review each department's hiring process and create a more centralized process that uses the Human Resources Department and members of the internal diversity team during the interview and selection process. So on interview panels, have someone present perhaps from HR or from the diversity team to come in and make sure that we are actively combating any hidden biases that might be there. This is kind of an addition to the one you saw earlier, getting HR more involved, more centralized process. So any questions on this?
So the basic thing about this one is every interview will have a person of color on the interview panel. Hopefully a trained panel, and then
there's that training thing again.
Yes.
So.
And again, this is the part where also you'll see this is where no job offer can be made, but until HR has reviewed the process to make sure that they had a good process. Yeah.
Oh yes, the software system has a neat way where on that list I can mark the ones that I've done for interviews, and I can put the results in the interview and mark the ones I brought in after that and mark the ones I've hired. And I'm guessing most of our hiring people at some point stop doing that. Maybe mark the interviewees and then kind of drift off. So we're going to straighten that out. Anything on number 9? Okay, number 10. Provide wider public, we're leaving HR now, so Melinda's feeling better, but now Kevin's on the hot seat. So we might make sure Kevin has a mic. So provide wider public awareness of and access to the Police Encounters educational video required for incoming 9th graders under the Sandra Bland Act. Remember we talked about how the video, it's a 14-minute video, state law says every incoming 9th grader must watch it. What we found out is some local school districts were not aware of that. They are now. They're going to fix that. In the meantime, we put the link on our website, and then Chief Deaver has some other ideas of how to spread that, get that out there to more people. So any questions on number 10? Well, ours is up. Our link is there, and then the other stuff that Kevin wants to do will be done very quickly. In fact, probably already working on a schedule for it.
Yeah, we're working with LISD to try to get on the campuses for the 9th grade class at assembly or something like that and have an officer present it.
Yeah, I seem to recall they were very receptive. The person we talked to was not aware that this provision was in there.
I'm wondering, because they weren't aware, you have not only 9th grade students, but 10, 11th, and 12th graders who could also benefit from that, seeing that video. So if we could encourage them, since they didn't, kind of get on board early, maybe to get all of their students see it, it would be helpful.
That's a great point.
Yeah, we'll share that and see if we can help facilitate that.
So one thing I just want to make sure that, Chief Deaver, you're aware of, with everything going on with COVID and the reopening of schools, a lot of the resources for the kids right now are going to be online. So just in case you can't get into a school, as long as it's a resource available that we can have and share and at least allow them to view it, we can do that through the means. Through LISD, it's a 1 to X, which means every kid has an opportunity to have an iPad and have those resources to view and see things on their own personal devices. So just in case, because we're not allowing visitors on campus right now, I'm telling you that. So if a video is available that can be provided to the schools, that's probably going to be the best resource right now to get that information out to the kids.
I know a video guy.
Yeah, as I said, we have a very good relationship working with LISD, and they were very receptive. That, oh, well, we can make that happen, and so Chief Stever is working with them on it. So, okay, number 11, develop, and this is the halfway mark, by the way. We're on a good time frame right now. Develop and implement a method for using actual body cam videos of officer interactions as part of a follow-up training opportunity for identifying hidden biases. And I don't recall, I didn't write down who said it, but somebody said, well, if you have the body cam video, can't you show the officer, here's how the encounter went and here's some thoughts? I'm like, well, yeah, we can probably do that. So, Chief Deaver, anything you want to add on this?
No, currently in our general orders, we've had this in place since we had in-car video. The supervisors would review videos of every officer on their shift, and that was one of the things that they actually looked for even back then was racial profiling. So we will expand that and to the body-worn cameras, which they're already doing, and look at better ways that we can get that video into the training sector.
Yeah, that was one of multiple times that somebody just said something casually in the group, and we're like, well, yeah, duh, we can do that. So that's in there now. Anything on number 11? Okay. Number 12. Implement ongoing training sessions during regularly scheduled officer briefings as refresher training on racial equity and hidden biases. A reminder, we have required training for the officers every year, and then they have at the start of their shift a briefing where they see what's going on for the day, and I've never done one, so I can't talk in detail about it, but it looks really cool on TV. And now we can add this as something because they're all there anyway. Anything to add, Chief?
No, we generally have about 15 minutes at briefing time, so it's a great opportunity for short videos and things like that.
Okay. Any thoughts or comments on 12? Hopefully you're seeing some of your ideas pop up. Number 13, as part of the annual budget process, review emerging trends and explore options for alternative response to certain types of calls through civilian personnel trained in mental health specializations, specially trained police personnel, or partnerships with community service agencies. Response to mental health calls is always tricky. Mental health call can go bad very, very fast. So you want to have people there that have the special training and have the special skills, but also are able to protect the safety of the public. This one's not saying we're going to make immediate changes. This one is saying is every year when the police chief is preparing his budget, he's going to look at what's going on right now, what's Denton doing, what's Dallas doing, what are they doing, what's working, what's been successful, what can we adopt. And some years there might be changes, and some years we might wait for the next one. So, microphone up here.
Last year, when the old City of Louisville Facebook page was on, they were talking about mental illness, and there was a lady that lived in your neighborhood. It's a black lady, and she has a, I think the son is he bipolar, or do you remember that? Because I think you chimed in. She had asked about if they see her son out.
Yes.
Yeah, so could there be a program like for parents that have children like that, or even adult children or special needs? Is there like a program where they could not really register, but you know, let them know that there is a person with a special needs or bipolar, sort of kind of mental illness at this particular address? Because don't you remember when she begged, she
Yes.
said, please do not.
She said, my son is a very large young man, but he is developmentally challenged and, 10th grade, 10-year-old, 11-year-old level, and doesn't always know what he's doing, and she's afraid that an officer might respond negatively to him and he wouldn't know what he was doing. and we put her in touch with PD at that time.
Yeah, there's a lot of programs like that out there. I think one's called Bring Them Home Safe or something to that effect. We implement our new CAD RMS system in January, and it does have that functionality. And what they would do is they would register and provide a photo of their loved one, and that way we can get that out to the officers and help get them home safely.
Yeah, if you're...
Not yet, because once we go live, we'll push that out to the public.
That'll start in January. Yeah, I mean, in case you're not aware, if you have someone in your house who's on a ventilator or a dialysis machine and has to have power, you can register and the power company knows, deal with them, and the fire department knows. So there's a lot of things like that that maybe aren't as well known as they should be, but we'll work with Kevin's group to make sure that gets out there when it's available. So any questions on 13? And I will add, I didn't see that Essence was on. Maybe she is now. She wasn't earlier. One of the things we talked about when you mentioned defund the police was that you in particular were interested in alternate ways of responding. And you mentioned mental illness, obviously not the only one, but you mentioned mental illness. That's what this addresses. It's not making radical changes now. It's putting the onus on the police department to at least once a year see what's going on out there and what's working, because I guarantee you his guys don't want to have any problems either. They are perfectly happy not being on YouTube, not being on CNN, and especially perfectly happy when everybody, they and the people they deal with, all go home safe. So this will put a burden on them every year to look at it and say, what can we do better? And some of these cities that are out there trying new stuff, if that stuff works, we'll get on board. So anything on 13? Okay, 14. Create a new citywide special, this is me, create a new citywide special event that celebrates Black heritage, culture, and innovation. And we talked briefly about maybe a Juneteenth, then I heard a pretty strong response of maybe not tied to that, historic slave culture. And I get that. So we put 3 different options in the recommendation. I encourage you to take a look at that when you have a chance so we can maybe narrow it down. One of them, I believe it was Jocelyn who brought it up, about doing something in February, do it indoors at MCL Grand, really focus on students and innovation and study, and we can do that, and art. And then also there's one for an outdoor event, either by itself or probably at least at first attached to another event. It really saves you a lot of time and cash, and it gives you an audience already built in. And the third is about rodeo, which could be by itself. That's got to wait till at least 2022 because the arena won't be ready in 2021. So, but we put that in there. We're planning on doing it. Probably in the 21-22 budget cycle. Depends on how big it is. If it's fairly modest, we can pull it off. And it also says in there in the backup that we would put together a volunteer committee to help make these decisions and help plan and carry out and recruit for this event. Some of you might be part of that, so I hope you will.
I think I'm looking at some of them.
Yeah, I saw you nodding your head a lot, but there was others. And a lot of you have experience in events, so we would tap that. Now that you're on board and I have your email address, you're going nowhere, just so you know. Any questions on 14? Okay, 15 is going to be me again. Enforce a standard that any city-conducted special event with more than 3 musical performances booked shall include at least one... Battery going bad? Let me trade mics.
Here. Take hers. He's going to trade with you. It's being
How do
nice.
I know?
I don't know what that was about.
I'm not sure that worked out the way I'd planned. I just spent a week in the deep East Texas woods to avoid contact with human beings. So, enforce a standard that any city-conducted special event with more than 3 musical performances booked shall include at least one minority-fronted performance group. Now, I'll tell you, this is the standard that we already had in place for this year. Unfortunately, all of our events got canceled. But what you'll see in the backup is we are expanding that to say that at these events, that the 1 in 4 minimum standard will be applied across the board. So if Western Days has 24 performances, it's not enough to say we had 1. No, 1/4 of 24 is 6. So our goal will be 6 or more. We also are going to expand this to include the Texas Tunes, all the presenting series combined in aggregate at MCL Grand. The Texas Tunes, the songwriters, and the comedy. We didn't include them this first year just because they already had everything booked, but they will moving forward. So minimum 1 in 4 at those events. Any questions or comments here? Okay. Number 16 will be me again. Create a plan for presenting a recurring schedule of culturally inclusive art exhibits at MCL Grand. Denise Helbing, who's our art center manager, already has looked at the schedule, identified that she believes most years she can add 2 additional culturally relevant art exhibits to our current schedule. The MLK event continues on, but we add 2 more. That could be in one of the various galleries. We're also looking at a way to add to some of the stuff for the Arts Advisory Board to make diversity a scoring criterion for grants. Right now it is not a criterion, but it will be, that outreach program. And also for public art, already the board discusses it, but it's not formal that you should, but we will. I mean, you do it anyway, now it's going to be a rule. So anything on number 16? Okay, 17. Implement software that tracks diversity among city board appointments and use data to establish and pursue inclusion goals. I mentioned to you that right now, when people do an application for a board or commission, we don't ask their ethnicity, so we don't track it. We just tell you anecdotally, we seem to have too few of this, group, and too many, well, not too many of anybody, but we look at it anecdotally. But ultimately, we don't have a way to track it. Now, appointments are still made by mayor and council. We'll provide them the data. They make the appointments however they see fit because you want the best people in the best roles. But right now, we don't even have counts. So this would create counts.
So we do have this software in the base budget. So October 1, we can move forward and purchase this software.
Yeah, I believe in the backup, Julie said she thinks we could have it implemented by November. That seems ambitious to me, but if it's simple software, maybe we can. So any questions on number 17? Well, ultimately, when Castle Hills is annexed, there's no difference. They're Louisville. Right now, Castle Hills only can apply for certain boards, and they only get, I think, well, they can have as many seats, but there's one.
Yeah, City Council determined which boards Castle Hills residents could be on because they're not Louisville residents. State law requires some boards to have Louisville residents, or ordinance does. But there's a number, like the Parks Board, that can have some Castle Hills residents, but City Council determines that.
Yeah, we have one on the Arts Board, for example. So yes, in presumably 2 years from now, if annexation goes as has been proposed, that no longer is a factor. So. Anything on 17? Starting the count, finding out what the data is, being able to track it. Okay, number 18, ensure inclusiveness in the small business workshops conducted by the Louisville Area Chamber of Commerce under the existing city agreement. Remember, Jason Moore told you we have an agreement for business retention with the chamber. And part of that is that they're going to conduct a series of business workshops during the year on a variety of topics. Insurance, I'm sure, will be one. He's going back to the chamber and saying, okay, we need to take steps to make sure that you consider inclusivity as you are planning this, as you are inviting this, as you are selecting presenters. It's got to be a multicultural activity within that function. So any questions? Yes. We have one back here and then up here. Mathis?
One of the biggest questions I have, and I talked to Don about this, like I said, when the first day I came in here, I drove the boys around and they saw how everything is, business are going out of business, but it's happening all over the United States. Over the past 15 to 20 years, and I'm 46, I have helped over 300 plus young men go to college, get degrees, and a lot of them are from the age from 35 on down. A lot of them are calling me right now from all over the country. A lot of them have big time jobs, they have degrees, they have masters, and they work for all these big companies. A lot of them have got laid off. A lot of them live in Seattle, Portland, Oregon. I have a few that live in Illinois, Chicago, and different parts of Illinois. I have quite a few that live in New York, and they live in these cities. And a lot of them are talking about moving down here. A lot of them are talking about moving to Texas because there's not so much chaos. A lot of them are saying they want to move to this part of the area in Louisville. They say, Coach, I want to know, because every year they come here and visit, and they come and help our younger guys. So what I'm saying is, what are we going to do to combat, because a lot of the people from the city, we see it on the news and we say people moving from the city, they really are going to move from the big cities and move to Texas. Texas is a hotbed. And so what I'm saying is, how are we going to basically build Louisville back up where a lot of these businesses are going out of business, and how can we get workshops and work together where a lot of young people are moving to Texas? It's not just older people no more. It's a lot of 20-some-year-old men, young men, a lot of 30 to 25 to 23. A lot of young men it's like 30 young men that I didn't help through the years that's educated, live good life, live in these cities, and these cities are really in disarray. No matter what nobody says and what they see on TV, it's really doing bad there. And in a lot of those cities, there's a lot of chaos going on. So what I'm saying is, how can Louisville open up to these young people that's educated, smart, all those different things? What can I tell these young men? And they all races.
I think really when you look at these type of job fairs that we would try to put together, and we would try to coordinate and work with the chamber, that's a way to do it. You know, you try to connect the job vacancies that are out there in the business community with those young men that want to move to Texas. So we don't have all the answers at the city for that, but we can work with the chamber, we can work with the businesses, we can work with the universities. I think it's everybody working together as a team.
And I'll tell you, we had some discussion. I talked to Jason some about that, and about job fairs and job, openings and training and so forth. And we saw that as a very broad topic, one that the city by itself couldn't take on, but he was doing some research, talking to some other groups to see what successes other cities might have had, other areas might have had in terms of that. Our employment numbers are really pretty strong here, not as strong as they were 9 months ago, but they're fairly strong. That is something that we're talking about. It didn't seem to fit this, and again, if there's a way to do it, let me know. It seemed broader and something that really needed a more of a coordinated effort between the city and other partners. So we'd love any ideas you've got, send them over, and I'll make sure Jason gets those. He'll talk to you with them. Oh, Tracy.
But anytime the Louisville Chamber maybe I just need to go back and try all over again, because anytime I see that, I just see discouragement and nothing positive. And that's because of my personal experience. Because I was a member for 10 consecutive years and paid a lot of money and offered to give workshops and was never accepted, was never allowed to.
What years were you a member?
From 2004 until about 2014. And then I went on over to Dallas. Well, I was with both of them, but I get more calls from Dallas than I do here. But when I see the small business workshops, I went to Leadership Louisville, and at no time did anyone of color come in to talk to us at all. Now, one did bring in chicken, Gloria's Fried Chicken. They brought chicken in, but they never did anything. I mean, it was not like that's all we can do is cook and fry chicken. I love fried chicken, first of all, but I'm just saying that it was just so discouraging. So whenever I see insured inclusiveness, I hope that works. Mm-hmm. And I hope that, you guys can, I just hope it works, but I just don't see that happening right now, and that's just my personal experience, and I hope that it changes.
But Dr. Pettaway, I just want to share that we're really so glad to know about those issues and thoughts. I didn't know that until I heard it from this group. As James defined, we were here to listen, and we have listened, and we're going to make sure that we watch now and we work closely with the chamber and that we're sensitive to that issue.
See, the fact that we have a contract with the chamber to do these gives us a lot of say over how they're done. Remember I mentioned earlier, chambers usually work with their members only. When they'll bring non-members into some events to try and recruit, but for the most part, when they order a meal, it's from a member, right? Or when they have a workshop, it's a member putting it on. And a lot of times, I was on a chamber board many, many years ago, you get into a rut of always using the same members because they're always there and they're on the boards. In this case, it's not going to have to be chamber members doing these presentations because we're helping to pick these and we've got a contract with it. So it'll broaden the field automatically. And we got a chance to kind of not enforce our will, but to maybe guide the current in a direction that we feel more comfortable.
I think many of you, getting you involved with the development of these workshops would be a great idea. You have so much business experience in the room. We need to be able to tap that.
Yeah, Jason took a lot of notes, but he'd welcome more. If you have some ideas about topics and what we need to do to help small businesses thrive and prosper, whether it's Mathis about employee connections or whether it's insurance here or your expertise, and we want to hear that, and Jason can work to shape that. So. Anything else on this? We're going to try. And again, we have a chance at this one. We don't necessarily have a chance to influence some of the others. This one we do. So, and Chambers had new leadership, what, 3 years ago? 3.5 years ago? Three, when Lori Fickling came in. She is open to doing things in a different way than maybe has been done previously.
And remember, Commissioner Mitchell's very involved, and you know what I'm saying there.
Oh yeah, she was taking notes too, and I'm sure she has had some conversations. I know Ray, who was here, and Yvonne, who's on, I'm sure have shared some information also. And our relationship with the Chamber right now is pretty good. And granted, there's been times when maybe it wasn't, years ago, but it's pretty good right now. We feel like they're responsive and they help us out with things, and this is a great opportunity. So we'll give it this shot this year and see what happens. So, anything else on number 18? For those who are counting backward, we have 4 left. Number 19, develop a housing strategy plan in 2022 and continue to perform impediments and fair housing studies on a regular schedule. Remember, Claire Powell was up here and pointed out that there used to be a rule that in order to get CDBG funding, we had to do this impediments and fair housing study on a regular basis, and we did it, and we learned some stuff, some good stuff that helped us. That rule has now been taken away, altered, where you don't have to do this anymore. This is a commitment that we're going to keep doing it anyway. Federal government has its rules, we have our needs, and we're going to do this regardless. Now it says 2022 because it takes time to prepare for it and budget for it. And that's when we were scheduled anyway.
We actually tried to do this study this year, and we didn't have enough money in the budget. It came in very expensive to hire a consultant in this area. So we plan to put it in the 2022 budget.
Yes, consultants are not cheap, no matter what they're consulting on. So, anything on number 19? I was really, in fact, when y'all were talking about this, and Claire was up here talking about how we used to have this rule and now we don't have it, I wrote on my note, well, can't we still do it? And then she said, so we're going to keep doing it, and I just circled it. Said, done. Number 20, yes. Collect and maintain statistics on racial, ethnic, and age breakdown for neighborhood grant recipients, and use this data to determine strategies for reaching underrepresented segments of the community. This is also Claire, and we were talking about the various grants that we have, the PEP grants and the neighborhood revitalization grants and so forth. Those are almost entirely based on income. If your income is at a certain level, you qualify. I mean, there's some matching here and there. There is one of our grant programs is really focused primarily on seniors and disabled. But if you hit that income, you qualify. So we've never tracked this information. When you asked Claire what percentage of grant recipients, I think it was from Tamla, what percentage of our recipients are minority? We don't know. Going forward, we can count. And when we count, maybe we can identify where there's a need to do something to broaden the applicant pool. Yes?
So you don't track minorities or seniors?
Seniors we track because they are one of the targets. And in fact, it might even be all of them we track seniors, but a couple of them are specifically for seniors and disabled, so we track those.
Okay, so I don't remember her mentioning, like, do they do things like changing or altering housing so seniors could stay in their houses longer or anything like that?
That's one of the goals of some of the grants. I know there's been a grant that was used to put in a wheelchair ramp and rail, which helped that resident stay in her house when she otherwise would have had to move to a nursing home. Right now we're taking one of the grant programs and really focusing it down to roofing and HVAC, which if anybody's ever had their HVAC go out in Texas, you can't live in that house. You might make it for a night with a fan, but then not going to happen. A lot of the grant programs have that as an objective, but it's not the only objective. Anything else on number, again, this is starting to count. We've never counted before. It's not a criteria, but we're going to count, and if we find a problem, then we'll find a way to fix the problem. Well, CDBG is part of this, but it's not all CDBG. We have most of our grants actually are funded by the city. CDBG is the social service grants and some other, and they have their own rules, and that is based on your low to moderate income neighborhoods. These are city-funded grants that City Council has added over the past few years. Okay, number 21. Streamline the current housing rehab grant program to make it more accessible to all members of the community and increase marketing of the program. That was one of the discussions on housing rehab. We're changing that up where it's going to really focus, if I remember correctly, this is the one that's going to focus on HVAC and roofing. It's not widely publicized. It can be publicized more, certainly, so we'll do that. And then at the same time, kind of streamline it to focus on just those two things, and that'll make the whole application process easier when it's just check A, check B, instead of write a whole narrative of everything you want to do. She shared that story with you about the woman who really needed to get, I think it was her toilet or bathtub that was leaking and in bad shape, and we went in the inspection and found the foundation was a problem, and the grant program said, oh, foundation has to come first. But by focusing on just HVAC and roofing, it takes that problem out. Anything on 21? Okay, 22. Again, not last, but the last one we'll talk about. Develop and implement a process that considers equity as a factor when deciding future public investment strategies, including an updated designation of targeted neighborhoods. So it involves parks, it involves public works, it involves engineering, it involves a lot of our departments, the building departments. I don't build stuff. They build stuff. If I build it, make them come fix it before you use it. But when you're deciding where to do a sidewalk rehab program, if you have two programs that are equally worthy and have equal ratings and equal costs, but one of them is in a neighborhood that has been identified as a targeted neighborhood, it gets the edge. Same with parks, same with others. Anything we want to add on this?
Planting trees, that's an issue that we're talking about right now. Where are we going to plant trees? Equity should be a consideration there.
Correct. Now remember, the housing study showed that we don't have a whole lot or high level of residential segregation. Our neighborhoods are fairly diverse. There is one pocket there that's very heavily Chin, but it's not neighborhood wide. There's one pocket that's very heavily Latino, but it's not neighborhood wide. So we can't really say we're going to target neighborhoods based on ethnicity. We're going to target it based on economic need and age of the properties and age of the infrastructure. But once those neighborhoods are identified, you see that last part, designation of targeted neighborhoods. Once you've identified those neighborhoods, it'll be like the triangle we're looking at. Putting a park in there will make a big difference. Putting a trail along the creek will make a big difference. Fixing some roads. You fix streets in a neighborhood, the whole neighborhood perks up. It's remarkable. So this would make equity a decision-making factor when we are looking at those public projects. Any questions or comments or thoughts on this one? Here in the back. Microphone's on the way.
I noticed coming over here today that you've got now new lines right by the post office and by Herring that you're putting in bike.
There is a trail project. It's the Garden Ridge Trail, most of which is already in, and then it comes down Valley Parkway, and then does it curve around Civic Circle?
Yes.
So that is the final portion of the Garden Ridge Trail, which is funded through a state grant, and took a long time to get approval of a design because of that, but it's going to be a great project. It'll connect the train station at Garden Ridge with this building, with one continuous trail. See, I love you. I've been begging for that trolley for 15 years now. My guess is because of right now the way ridership is and the fact that we don't have yet the housing base built in Old Town, but knowing that the housing is on the way, my guess is we're probably 2 years away.
It is on the list.
It is on the list, and DCTA is aware it's on the list. So yeah, we're talking to them about that. I've been wanting that for quite a while, haven't I?
Yes, he has, every budget.
I used to put it in my budget proposal every year just to keep it alive, but the past couple of years it was pretty clear, no, this is not the time. So, but it's out there. I have that written up. What have we missed? Is there anything that you thought we were going to have in these? And remember, purchasing I'm going to add based on what we just talked about, the 6 we said. And is there anything that you thought you were going to see that you didn't?
This may not be for the city. Someone mentioned very early on about coverings at the bus stops. And it was just last week, a week before last, I was on Southwest, and the kid was waiting for the bus. It was 90+ degrees, so he got on the sidewalk, and the business owner ran him away, said he was loitering. And the first thing that came to mind was if there was some type of, shelter for him to stand out there. Once again, this may be DCTA or someone else, but
yeah, that is an issue with DCTA, but we do have a council member that sits on that board. That certainly is a goal to improve the support structures for that operation. We have just worked with DCTA. They're hiring a consultant that's going to come in and do an overall efficiency study, and that certainly would be part of that overall study. We do give about $14 million to DCTA, so the city does have something to say.
Yeah, that falls under the category of things we can't go out and do ourselves, but we recognize it as a need, and so there's a lot of behind-the-scenes discussion going on to try and move it in that direction. Penny.
Now, that was one of my questions that I wanted to see. And also, I think I sent you an email. I didn't get the opportunity to talk about it one night, but about renaming some streets in Louisville after
I must have missed that email. I must have gotten lost in there, but I'll look again.
Well, I sent you a whole list of things after one of our things, but renaming, like we don't have a Martin Luther King Street here in Louisville. We don't have a Cesar Chavez Street here in Louisville. I looked it up.
That is always
so there is
the
a
difficulty.
Yeah, there is a formal process for renaming a street. In fact, anybody can put the suggestion in. Ultimately, council makes that call. You survey the people that live or have business on that street to see if they're okay with it because they take on expense. It can be done. I honestly don't remember the email. I just must have missed it somewhere in the batch. But I'll do a search for your name and see if I can find that.
Or could you just resend that to us?
Oh, okay, I'll resend it. I think I sent it around community policing, and you responded to the community policing.
I might not have gotten all the way down. Yeah, if you'll send that again, we'll take a look at it again.
I thought we were going to go into depth about the educational system, like hiring more.
So our plan is, because we can't control that, but we have a great relationship with LASD, and we're using up so much time. As I told Fumi, that was a big focus for her also. Next week, we're going to have the final recommendations. You already have seen them, so hopefully we'll get that done very, very quickly. We're going to devote the rest of the time. There might be one topic from Donna, but the plan to spend most of the time talking education at that point. And we're actually going to invite school districts to see if they want to send, of course we have some school district employees in the room, but not an administration rep, and see if they want to send an administration rep to take notes on that. So our plan is next week to spend some time talking education.
Dr. Jones.
Pastor Cox and then Dr. Jones.
That may answer my point, actually, because early on I did bring up some statistics about our educational disparity with Flower Mound, and so I would love to get a chance to at least have those concerns voiced to the right people.
Absolutely, because you read those numbers and I knew there was a disparity. I didn't know how much it was, and it was kind of shocking to hear. I don't know the cause of that, but that's a good question. We'll ask them. So have that question ready next week. Dr. Jones?
Well, mine is not a question. It's more so a comment. First, these are very well-written recommendations. The way that you've worded them, it seems that you've captured the ideas, the thoughts, the comments of people in the room. So I want to say thank you for that. Also, it's a level of accountability now because we all have this in print. And if you flip through it, you can see who it's been assigned to and the person that is going to be in charge of it. So I'm hopeful that all these things that we've discussed, that we presented, are going to bring about positive change. And now we have something to reflect back on and be like, hey, we got this. A lot of people got it. So we can reflect back on it. So I just want to say thank you because these are very well written.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And again, it was Calvin Dorsey who said, make sure you put who's accountable on there. I'm like, well, yeah, that's good. Especially if it's not me. I like that.
But we thank you. I mean, all of these ideas came from this group.
Up front.
I was going to say the same thing you did as a preface to this question, but you handled that part, so I'll go right into the question. So with all these wonderful things that you guys have set up, what happens, what are the chances that you start some of these or things get in the way, and could anything be dropped, or are these absolutely, if they're on the list, going to actually take place?
So
Can
you're
I
right.
answer that, James?
Yes, absolutely.
So the buck stops with me, right? So this is in my hand, and I will make sure these happen.
All right.
Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
You know who to look for.
Any other comments, thoughts, suggestions? Because if not, what I'll do is I will take the comments you made today. We already added an item. We'll get to Jocelyn in just a moment. I'll add the 6 for purchasing. We'll come back next week with what will, in theory, be a final report with tweaking you can make. Yes, Jocelyn.
Okay, so again, you guys did a great job. What did you guys learn, or what did you guys get to feeling from being here with us these last 6 weeks?
You opened my eyes to a lot of things. I will say that. Things that perhaps we knew deep down were there, but to hear you verbalize it was really meaningful to us. Some of you I've known for a while, Tamala. A lot of things I didn't know until you shared it with us that day. So I think these meetings have been very, very beneficial to city staff, and certainly will make us much more sensitive in so many ways. So I thank you for your openness and your honesty.
Sorry about rambling.
So James, we might want to talk about next steps with the rest of the city council. So these recommendations will be taken forward to the city council in a workshop setting. We'll let you know the night those will be discussed so that you can be present to help answer questions with the city council.
Or maybe present online.
Or online, sorry. Yes.
Microphone here, Pastor Langstaff.
I totally agree with the comments you made. I think you all did an outstanding job. I didn't know it was going to be like this, but you know, I'm so glad that I was able to sit and hear and listen to what everybody. You all have done an outstanding job. All your speakers put their heart in it. That matters to me. My thought, and this is not trying to be judgmental or anything. Please don't take it like this. What is you all's plan to get this done, report it, and keep moving forward?
So one of the major issues, I think, is to take these, each one of these as a project. We've assigned them to a person. We've assigned a time frame. And so then it's my direct reports that are watching and monitoring and driving these projects to get them done. So it takes management making it a priority to make it happen.
And it's going to be, we're going to be updated. The city's going to be updated. How's all that going to work?
That's a really good question. Yes, I think once we should probably try to do maybe a quarterly report back to the group. James and I really had not talked about that, but I think it's really a good idea to give you this report back with the details of where we are on each item.
I just want to say thank you. I enjoyed the process. And after spending a lot of years sitting on the CDBG, I think it was 12 years, and seeing the workings of that, and knowing that we put, our feet to the pedal and got things done and working in conjunction with the city council, I know that you will stand by your word and implement these. But again, a lot of this is going to cost money, time, and everything like that. So with that being said, along with the quarterly updates, are you guys going to prioritize which one you're going to implement first, which one you'll have to push further down the line and everything like that?
Will you let me give me some time to think about that? I mean, we have them really in no specific order. Some of these are fairly easy to develop. Some of them are basic process changes that really don't cost money. So Melinda's already been hard at work with the HR staff on this. So let me take some time and go through that with that question in mind and report back to you at the next meeting.
Okay. And I honestly enjoyed these Thursdays because I was able to get out and socialize with people. So
that's so true.
Yeah, so we need to come up with something else after this.
because I'm trying to tell you.
Wait, you know you're still on 2025.
Yeah, well,
and we haven't had a meeting in a while.
We need to meet because this was my highlight, okay? This was my Thursday to get out and mix and mingle. So I'm serious. Y'all need to come up with some other program, committee, or something. Put me on it until this COVID stuff is over because I need a reason to get out of my office and get out of the house.
Remember, you got one more week here, so you're not done yet.
I'm just saying. Not done yet. And I prefer for it to be on a Friday night so that can replace my my Friday date nights.
Dr. Jones.
Implement what you said as well as what Mathis said. You just mentioned keeping like a quarterly update and including us in that. One of the most powerful things as consumers, as business owners, is word of mouth. And a lot of things that he brought up about the gentlemen that were interested in coming here, if we have insight in our personal communities, where we know groups of people that are people of color, minorities, that we have the insight that we can say, oh, it's dispatcher jobs available. Like, I would have never told anyone to start applying for dispatcher jobs because I didn't know. So the awareness that we receive from this in the communication, if it continues now in our pockets of family, friends, minority groups, we can start communicating some of the needs of the city that would also not just be posted somewhere, but that we can speak on firsthand.
I think that's so true, Dr. Jones. The first night that when we actually shared some of our goals with this program, that was really one. I said we need to form relationships, and the relationships we formed here I think will be very beneficial. But you need to let us know what are the best ways for us to get additional information to you. So do you want to get a listing of all of our job openings? Is that beneficial? Just give us some thoughts on, some specifics on what we need to do.
Well, my thought process was just like when he sends his emails out, we know to expect it. We know what's going to, we know what to expect. So when your emails come out and your name pops up, oh, it's from Mr. Klunk. Right. Yes, that's right. I said it right?
Mr. Kunke.
Yeah. So when I see his emails pop up, it goes, okay, I know what this is about. So if that communication process continues and it does come from you or somebody that we're familiar with, we know that if it's coming down the pipe, what to expect, if that makes sense.
It does. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Does that make sense, John?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, you better not put me in the spam folder. I'll be watching you now. Okay.
This has been an awesome experience, and it's been very eye-opening. Again, I commend everyone that has been a part of this process. It's, I think, unfortunately, it puts us in a category of being in the know that the rest of the community is not. And I'd like to share that, at every opportunity. Do want to share a thought and see where, this might be able to go. Several years ago, Duncanville, the city of Duncanville, in an effort to curb the white flight, if you will, of businesses and residents, they implemented a process where they supported specific times where business owners, the business folks in the community would intentionally sit and talk with folks from the community, people that were not of their same color, their economic standards, so on and so forth. It was kind of a lunch and learn. It wasn't really lunch, it was after hours kind of thing. And I'm just wondering if there's some way that we can promote some sort of togetherness that way from a city standpoint of learning the folks that are in our community.
I'll make a note and see what we can find. Okay. As the microphone moves, Chief or Melinda, anything you wanted to add?
The one thing I wanted to add when I heard Dr. Jones say that he didn't know about dispatcher jobs, but that what would be really helpful is y'all have so many contacts. We have more than just dispatcher jobs. There are certain jobs we can never fill, and you know, we're looking for a way that we can get our employees who are, if a field that's just, which I think is interesting, water and wastewater. We run the plants, and they have to have certain licenses through the TCEQ, and we can't find those people. And through the school, we've talked about, I wish we could get with LISD, and this could be something we could encourage. Not everybody's cut out for college, right? So these jobs, there's a definite career progression. It's a great job that you can work your way up, and you have a nice retirement. And I would love to be able to share that with, so any of you that have, whether it's your church and you need, I could get people to come out and talk, so a little more personal than a career fair maybe. I just want to offer that and say that our staff would love that. Sometimes we get so busy in the day-to-day, post the job, get the job, send the job, you know, that we're missing those opportunities. So I just want to put that out there, that you reach out to me and let me know whether it's coming to talk to a high school group, or whether it's church, or whether it's anything that you have. There are a lot of careers at the city that I don't think people really even know that are there, that are these career paths. They're not just a job that, a no-end job that you're going to be stuck at that job forever. And you know, getting those people in to have those promotional opportunities, I think, is great. So that's the only thing I wanted to add, that I need your help, and I'm willing to come, bring our staff, and do anything to make ourselves available, just so we can, you know, learn about each other and learn what we have to offer, and maybe how you need to prepare yourself for those jobs.
Okay. Ketya.
I don't want to hold y'all up, but like through this, like I've learned a lot. Like I've learned a lot about like finances, business marketing. Like that's why I was kind of quiet during some of these points, because I wanted to sit down and actually learn like behind the scenes with the city. And it makes me think like, okay, in the future, like, do I want to come back to Louisville? Do I want to start a family back in Louisville? Like, thinking about all these changes that are going to be made, and like through this I've also like made connections with different people like I didn't know. Now I know, like if somebody wants to do business and marketing, I know where to send them to. And as far as me, like now I know like my career path, and I have like I have emailed like Dr. Pettyway, because she does like what I want to do. So now I have like connections of where I want to go as far as like my future as well.
Outstanding. Outstanding. And I will add that Ketya is a member of our Youth Action Council for this next year. So we're very much looking forward to that in a very different type of format. Anything from you? Anything from you, Chief?
I echo some of the things that the others have said. I've really enjoyed this process. I talked to chiefs from throughout the Metroplex, and they're doing similar things. I don't think theirs are going as well as this one is going. So I appreciate y'all. You know, that's all y'all. Y'all did those 22 things up there. We didn't do it. Y'all did. So I think that's really important. And y'all came into this and took a holistic approach. You know, knowing what the catalyst was for all of this, y'all look beyond that at the broader issues. And I think that's well received, and I think that was the appropriate way to go about it.
And Mathis over here, microphone's on the way.
The past 5-6 weeks, I've been telling all the young men that I helped through the years about this. They're in shock. Oh, that's not happening in our city. It's not happening here. And so I really do appreciate you guys. You guys have done a great job. I know you guys for a while now, and I just want to say you guys have done a great job. A lot of young men I help, they're in shock. They don't even understand. Like, they're not doing this around the United States. They're not having meetings and talking and communicating. So I just want to say you guys have done a really just amazing job. A lot of the young men, the first thing they say to me, they want to meet him. They want to meet the chief. It was like, because it's not happening. Because I have 2 young men that are police officers right now. I haven't talked about it. I don't really tell my business. I'm very quiet.
Are they looking to move to Louisville? Because
Yeah, we have
got
some vacancies.
Yeah. So I'm really quiet. I just sit here and be quiet. But I'm just saying, I like to thank you guys. You guys have been a blessing, and good job.
Well, thank you, Mathis. And just to remind you, this is a really important step we're all excited about, but making these things actually happen is the important part, and you need to hold us accountable. If you don't like how quickly we're moving, if you don't like the direction, call her, call me, because we're going to make these things happen. That's what we're here to do. Yes. We don't know what that'll be in the format. We don't know what format that'll be yet, but yes, there will be updates. And the report will be publicized on the city website and through city media channels and so forth also. We want everybody to know what we're doing and what our objectives are. So anybody online want to add anything before we wrap? We have one.
I just like to say you guys have done an outstanding job and really do appreciate everything that you're doing. I'm sorry I have never attended a session face-to-face, but I've got a few relatives that depend on me. I've got a 102-year-old great aunt, so I just got to try to stay as healthy as possible.
Well, Yvonne, thank you for being part of the process. I hope you're able to participate well there, and anything you want to add, send it our way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't see a hand up. So remember, next week, we've got the 2 things. We'll have go through the final report. So the 22 you saw here, plus the 7 that you've added. You'll see those in a little bit final format. That shouldn't take long, because you already did 22 of them. And then we'll talk education. I know the front row is very interested. I'm sure Dr. Jones is interested in hearing as well. We'll talk education. We're going to invite the school district to send a representative, or at least listen online, so they can hear directly from you what your issues are. I want Pastor Cox to share his numbers again, because those get your attention. As an LHS dad, that got my attention. So we'll go through that next week. We've been meeting at 6:30. This time we met at 6. Does 6 o'clock work for everyone, or do you want to go back? 6 o'clock? Because look at that, it's not even 9 and we're done. Okay. Dr. Jones, that's the best applause we get. So folks, thank you. Be safe going home. I believe purchasing put some materials out on the desk for you, including the survey of cities, and we'll see you again next week.